Good morning, everybody, on this beautiful Friday here in Kildare. Hopefully it's as beautiful where you are too today. Fabulous weather here, which we badly need. Very welcome to this morning's CCMA community chat. As always with these, I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for people to log in. I can see people logging in as I speak, so we're just going to give it a couple of more minutes. We have a really treat in store today with our guru, John Riordan, who you can see there in the top of the screen, who I'll formally introduce shortly, and he's going to share his expertise with you on smarter working, remote working, the new work environment that we're all in currently. As this is very much an interactive webinar compared to our earlier webinars, really keen for you guys to send in your questions, comments. Please do contribute as we go along, and I'll be keeping an eye on those questions for John. As always, we have Cormac and his colleague Niamh from WSI supporting us today. So hi guys, and thanks a million as always for your help on this. But please do send through your questions and your comments. And also we're going to be doing two polls, two really interesting polls that I think everybody will hopefully get some value out of, that we'll be running as we go through this morning's webinar. So I'm just going to give it another till 11:02. I see we have a good core contingent on, John, anyway, to support you. I see Sean from MBCI, Daniela from Vox Pro, Aaron, Niall from Virgin. So hello everybody, and you're very welcome, and Laura from Sun Life. So there's a really good contingent there this morning. So great to see everybody. And as always, sorry, go on, Cormac.
Say, Dorothy, just as a housekeeping thing, it would be great if maybe some of the people who've joined the call already could type into the chat box just so that you can hear and see us okay.
Great, yeah, thanks Cormac, thanks. And just to say, as always, we'll be recording this webinar and we'll be making it available on the members area on the events page. And we've actually recordings of all the webinars to date are there. And just in case you're finding them difficult to find, if you go onto the events page, you just need to scroll down because they move into a previous event, and you'll see there where you'll see the button where you can download the webinar, and the presentations are there as well. So lots of material to hopefully help you in the coming weeks. So it's 11:02. I'm going to hand over to John. So John Riordan is a guru, as I say, in remote and smarter working. And John very kindly hosted a seminar for us, probably going back 2 years ago now, John, that we had a huge participation rate in. And John is Director of Support for Shopify, and he's going to talk to you about Shopify and tell you a little bit about them as well. And he's going to share his expertise and some interesting hints and tips for all of us in this new way of working. So he's going to start, give an overview, and then, as I say, start sending your questions in, and I'll go through them with John as they come along. So hand over to you, John. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million, Dorothy. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes on some personal context and also a little bit about some of the stuff that we do at Shopify. So I've been involved in the homework space since about 2002, an awful long time ago, and it was just post 9/11, which was probably the last major catastrophe that we all faced from a business perspective. And those of you who were around in those back then will remember, but I was working for Virgin Atlantic in the US, and we were in a situation where we needed to change our support model and change it radically and change it really quickly. And this whole concept of remote work was something that we decided we'd take a look at. And between sort of the end of, between around November 2011, or sorry, November 2001 and October 2002, we moved 100% of the Virgin Atlantic support team to remote. Now, keep in mind, this was a day when there was no broadband. So it's 18 years ago, we were dealing with modems and baud rates and other such horribly awful points in the, I suppose, sign or guideposts from the past. It's almost like an episode of Back to the Future. But look at how much we've evolved. So let's roll the clock forward to February of this year. And all of you who've had an interest in remote work will have kind of gone to bed on one day in February 2020 and woke up the next day, and we're literally in March of 2030. That's what it feels like. It's almost like 10 years worth of expected growth in remote work has happened, not by design, but it's been a forced compression of time. So the big challenge that faces all of us in our work environment is, how do we get those people who've always been waiting for this to happen, how do we get them comfortable and effectively working in and leading in this environment? And then how do we get those kind of intransigent, calcified folks who've been negative about remote work, but who are all part of this forced experiment. How do we get them on side and understanding and accepting this new forced reality? So that's what we're facing as companies and as individuals, and hopefully we can tease out some of those points over the course of the next 25 minutes or so. So just to give you a little bit of context on Shopify, as you probably know, we're about a 5,500 to 6,000 person company. I'll be suitably vague in the numbers if you don't mind. We have approximately 2,000 people who are dedicated remote staff, almost all of our support organization. Then separate from that, the balance of the organization was up until recently resolutely office-based, primarily in Canada. But on March 12th, that all became remote. So suddenly you had a collision of two cultures, a very strong office-based culture and an incredibly strong remote-based culture. So there's a massive learning opportunity for us at Shopify as well, even though from a support perspective, we view ourselves as being really knowledgeable from the remote work perspective, but we're now ingesting about 3,500 people into our mode of work. So we're also experiencing a tremendous learning, and it's quite interesting. As you know, I'd probably describe myself as one of the leading advocates of remote work within the organization, and to now have a bunch of people who've looked kind of sideways and quirkily at us in the past, now looking at what we're doing and trying to evolve their whole work product. So it's a fascinating experiment for all of us. It's tough. It's really, really tough. And what I think we'll see over the course of the next couple of months is a variety of different emotions and behaviors, and it's something that we'll deal with in some of the questions later on. So that's just a sort of a personal context as to how I got into remote work and where we are at Shopify. And Dorothy, I'll hand over to you if you want to go through some of the questions, and then we can come back afterwards. There's a couple of polls we've put in place as well, and we'd ask you to, there's one of them there on screen, and so we just ask you to fill out those polls so that we can actually see, kind of get a mood of where we are as a group, and we can address some where we are, I suppose, in the last couple of minutes of the session. So please answer the two polls that you'll see, and I'll hand it back over to Dorothy for some questions.
Great. I think we just give everybody a minute, John, if that's okay, just to do that first poll there now. I think that's you're running that now, Cormac, for us, which is great. So
the question is, how long do you think it will be for your team or company before you'll be back working together in your normal workplace? The reason for this is we just want to get a sense as to how long people will think, because I think the expected time frame is highly likely to drive the behaviors that we'll see, and it's important for all of us to get a sense from our peer group as to what various companies are thinking of.
Okay, John, I think we'll close the poll now, so we'll just share the results on the screen.
Okay. So yeah, if you look at the median there, we're talking about June 30th would be just, if I'm going to kind of guess the median would probably be late June when we'd hit the 50th percentile. That's kind of interesting. So that really means that we have a full 3 months ahead of us, just from a perspective side of things, 3 months ahead of us in this, and we're only 3 weeks in. So I'd say batten down the hatches, guys. It's going to be a very interesting period of time.
So John, I'll shoot in with the first question, and I suppose it's just given your experience in working in the remote space for many years. What tips would you share with people to help them now get attuned? And if that poll is correct, we're now looking at maybe a 3-month window, as you said there. But what sort of tips would you give them in terms of settling into this way of working?
Sure. Look, there are tips and tricks on remote work that have sprouted up over the course of the last 3 weeks. I think I've probably seen about 50 to 100 different varieties of tips and tricks. Many of them are from what I would refer to as people who are Johnny-come-latelys to the remote work arena. So rather than regurgitate those, and there are tons of lists out there, I'm going to give you a couple of more, I suppose, quirky ones. One interesting one is, and this is for particularly for folks who are new to the space, new to working from home, is limit the time that you spend on household chores. It's incredibly easy to deliberately, I know you're going to say you're not deliberately doing it, but to deliberately distract yourself if you're at home. And seriously, your house does not need to be militarily cleaned 4 times a day. You didn't do it beforehand. Don't start doing it now. Recognize, go look in the mirror, recognize what you're doing. You're procrastinating. Get your ass back up in front of the screen. Now, you're not going to see that in any tips and tricks poll, but it's something that we all face at some stage in our remote work, so be aware of it. I suppose a more mundane one is have a trigger for when your workday starts, and equally have a trigger for when your workday ends. For me, I have a very, very simple one. When I walk into my home office, first thing I do is I put on a pair of slippers. These are my work slippers. Put them on every single day right outside my home office door, and I take them off at the end of the day, and that's for me a sign that I'm finished. An added thing that I do as well, I suppose the third one is I don't bring my laptop downstairs into the rest of the house with me. I leave it in the attic in my home office. I have the luxury of having a home office, but I'm very deliberate about not bringing my laptop out of the room because that's where I work, and the rest of the place is where I live. So that's 2 or 3. Another one would be, of course, taking very clear and distinct breaks. Very important thing to do because the danger of overworking is actually probably the most omnipresent danger for all of us. Another one is on a more quirky side of things. There are lots of us who struggle to function without coffee. Guess what? Go invest in an espresso machine and get the pods delivered so you don't have to go out. You're going to have 3 more months of this. It's a worthwhile investment. For probably $100, €100, you're going to have a really good an espresso machine and enough coffee to keep you well caffeinated and pumped up. Again, that's one you're not likely to see in any one of the tips and tricks. Another one is healthy snacks. Make sure the snacks that you keep in the house are healthy, as you will definitely eat them during the day. Absolutely, definitely. So if you buy shitty snacks, you're going to eat them and you're going to feel like crap. If you buy healthy snacks, you will be sated and you'll feel a whole hell of a lot better. So don't fool yourself into buying a little bit of both, and I'll reward myself with the not so great ones. No. Buy the healthy stuff, stick to it. It's a hard one to do, but it's something that you need to do. On the connectivity side of things, I would encourage everybody to build out as much as you can in your Slack channels or team channels or whichever product that you're using. I would encourage you to build out social community channels where people are able to interact in the team from a social perspective. That's not work related, whether it be a cooking channel, a knitting discussion, a keep fit thing, whatever it is. And as leaders, please participate in those and encourage people to have those conversations. It's the lifeblood of the connection that all of us have, and to ignore it would be dangerous. Another one that I found to be fantastic as well is, a lot of us are using Zoom and Google Hangouts and all sorts of other products right now, and many of us are socializing on those products. So like we have a cocktail hour on a Friday evening now as part of one of the groups that I'm in at work, and we meet for it's actually a group of people from Cork who work for Shopify, and we refer to it as our Corktail hour. So you keep those kind of quirky things going, and you're going to scratch the itch that everybody has, which is constant social interaction. A lot of times, there's one last point that I'm going to make, and I'm sorry for rambling on this one in terms of tips and tricks, but in your various, I'm going to use the term Slack channels, or insert whichever tool you use. There will be a lot of conversations that as leaders you'll look at it and you'll think to yourself, that's a little bit inane and a little bit stupid. But I want you to think beyond that. In many instances, the things that people are talking about is actually irrelevant. The fact that they're showing up and participating is the piece that's relevant. because in many instances, it's the most visceral feeling that we all have, which is, I want to belong, I want to be seen, and I want to be heard. And sometimes somebody getting into an animated discussion about something that's relatively inane is simply a manifestation of, hello, don't forget me, I'm out here. And we have to recognize that as leaders.
I have a couple of questions, so can I start shooting them at you, because I know time is precious. So the first one from Paul Kelly is, my question is around impact to productivity. What impact have you seen to productivity in the transition to home working in the short and medium term?
I've seen nothing but an increase in productivity. As we've seen the morphing of the office group, people who were in the office coming into remote, what I've seen is meetings being shorter, more concise and precise, and bullshit meetings have gone away from the calendar. The EY put out a report earlier on this week, I think it was about 3 days ago, and one of the things noted in the report was a noticeable but anecdotal change in productivity, and speaking to the exact points that I just mentioned. So there's some very interesting stats going to come out of this in the long term.
Just a comment on that myself. I know a couple of companies I've been speaking to were saying one of the challenges is that in a lot of contact centers, frontline staff have a couple of screens in front of them, and now that a lot of them are working off laptops, they haven't got that facility. So it is slowing down calls slightly, just because they can't access the information as quickly as they normally would if they were in the contact center environment. So I do think we need to take that into account. And I think the other interesting point is that I think for the first week or two of this, people were just happy to get people sorted in home offices, get the technology right. And I think now that we've got that over that, and we know potentially we've a couple of months or more ahead of us, it's when we can start looking at things like productivity. So I think it's reasonable for companies to start talking and having that discussion with staff that are working remotely. My next question comes from Sean. Sean says, the slippers are a good idea, but I still dress up as if heading to the office, as I feel that makes me know I am in the work zone. Any comments on this, John?
Well, Sean, this is the first time I put a shirt on this week, and that's because I'm dealing with my peers in the industry. Usually it's a t-shirt and a hoodie. So I actually got dressed up to talk to you today, so I'm feeling good about myself.
Next question, Ronan from Irish Rail. Thanks, Ronan. Just off a Skype informal call with 20 of my team, but difficult to get engagement with a number of people experiencing issues with sound or connections. Any suggestions?
Yeah, that's a great one, actually, and that's a real challenge for everybody. And we use Zoom a lot, and Zoom has been so popular that it's going to be a problem, to be honest with you. So what we do is, like, we have a cameras on policy all the time at at Shopify, and I think it's a policy that I would encourage people to continue with as an overarching policy. But whenever there's a degradation, I would say turn the cameras off from time to time, and you'll probably get a little bit of a burst in bandwidth. That's the only hack that I would think of. I'd hate for us to go back into the days of just a pure audio call. But no, I would say toggle on and off with the cameras is probably the best thing to do.
And just on that, with a team of 20, would it be better to try and divide it in two? I know it's not ideal. At 20 is a lot to try and have connected at the one time.
It can be. I'm not a technical. It's not something in my wheelhouse. But I would say you're probably correct. That breaking it down into smaller groups is probably the right thing to do. Don't forget also the asynchronous channels of your Teams and Slack and that kind of stuff. You can have just as much engagement as you have with video. So if the video craps out, have a plan B and be comfortable that you can continually keep people engaged. And one aspect on that one that I would encourage you is, if you have people who are quiet, but whether it be in the written word or in a conference call, actually reach out to them and ask them for their opinion. It's a really important thing not to let people hide too far into the corners.
And I think the other thing to mention, John, in one of our earlier calls, we talked about having this sort of a buddy system, that it was like a Secret Santa type idea, that for every week somebody's allocated to keep an eye on somebody and be chatting with them and make sure that they're doing okay. And I actually think that's a really nice idea, and can add a little bit of element of fun into a team environment as well. Okay,
yeah,
next
it's great. Great idea.
From Robin, how far do you think we are away from businesses welcoming work from home as a standard practice rather than a perk? I think Robin has seen our next poll on this, John.
Okay, Do you want to throw it up there, throw up the poll there? Yeah. This is a really interesting one. Given a choice at the end of this, which is our current issue, what percentage of your team do you think you'll want to stay? Do you think will want to stay working from home? I'll share a couple of relevant points I've seen in the past on this one. So, Cormac, you let me know when you think we've got enough on the poll there to
Sure.
deal with.
We'll give it another 20 seconds.
Okay, fair enough. So a couple of years ago, actually on 3 occasions in the last 18 years, I've been involved in taking large groups of people and actually bringing remote work to them, offering remote work, and essentially encouraging, cajoling contact center folks to go work from home. Historically, what I've seen is approximately, all right, that's a very interesting one. Okay, so we're talking about, I'm going to do the rough maths here on it. I'm going to say the median is around the 25 to 30% mark. Let's call it the median being about 30%. So that's interesting. So if you think of it, I'm just going to put it in Irish context for a second. There are 100,000 people per day between Meath, Kildare, and Wicklow driving into Dublin every single day. So the likelihood is that 30% of those people are going to self-select to actually stay at home. That's going to be a cataclysmic change in traffic, in environment, and in the way companies work. It's going to have a knock-on impact on the real estate market. From the IDA's perspective, what it's going to potentially do is actually free up, and I'm going to be very positive for a second and put on the green jersey. It's going to free up a ton of office space in Dublin, and also free up accommodation in Dublin, and it'll give the IDA and the IDA and their pipeline the opportunity to bring in even more companies. So I am very bullish about what it means for Ireland in the short to medium term.
Great. Okay, next question from Ross. What tips do you have for maintaining company culture with a team working remotely, and how does the new hire ramp when they aren't close to the wider team to hear and learn on the job?
Okay, I'll deal with the first one. It's if you have to talk about culture, you don't have it, right? If culture is something you continually talk about, then you've got a problem. Culture is what you live, and culture will typically be something that comes up through the organization. Best way to get that culture going is trust your people, connect with them on a regular basis, and communicate nonstop and over communicate nonstop. And by over communicate, talk to people on video, but also follow up or simultaneously be dealing with people on Slack or Teams or whatever, and make sure you've got both channels going, and you confirm at the end of a meeting in writing what it was you discussed and what was agreed. And it's a very important thing to do, and I think that will actually drive the productivity and the collaboration. Second thing is in terms of onboarding and connecting. Can you repeat that second part of the question again, Dorothy, please?
Yeah, sure. How does the new hire ramp when they aren't close to the wider team to hear and learn on the job?
It's a very hard one because it's different from every company, but we bring on every single one of our support personnel, we bring them on remotely. So what we do is we immerse people right up front in all of our Slack channels, in all of our video conferences. So we don't know really what it's like to do the over-the-shoulder training because we're all online. And I think companies just need to be honest, you need to hold your nose and jump. Hold your nose and just jump into the deep end. It will work. Trust yourself. You're smart people. This is a needs-must situation for the next 3 months, and you'll work it out.
And John, just linked to the earlier question and the poll, I mean, if 50-odd%, whatever percentage we said of people will still want to work from home, what would be your advice to companies, 6 months down the road? Should they be facilitating that? Should they, if it works for them in the next couple of months, should they be continuing to let the people who want to do it do it?
Well, I'm going to correct you. It was actually about the median we said was about just in the high 20s to, let's call it 30%. Yeah. I would, as a business owner, I would be actively encouraging it because essentially what's happened very quickly is work is now seen as a thing rather than a place. And that's happened overnight. All of us who've been advocating for remote work have said stuff like this, and we can all pretend that we were all really smart and whatever bullshit, but this is really what's happened. Work is now a thing, and it's become its value is its portability, And we've seen that particularly in the BPO space. There are BPOs who've been literally wiped out because they've not been able to get their folk, because they're in places where the infrastructure outside of the offices has not been able to handle it. So I think people will recognize that the work as a place has changed as a mindset. So I think the companies that don't embrace that seismic change are going to get left by the side of the road.
Another question, John. How do you deliver training to new groups remotely? What tools do you use? Paul has asked.
We have an internal tool that we use called Bridge. We use Zoom a ton. We use Hangouts, and we use about 4 or 5 different video tools. We always have a couple of tools in our back pocket, because routinely you're going to have some issues. So I wouldn't be completely and utterly tied into one particular communication mechanism. I've used Appear.in, I've used Google Hangouts, Google Meets, Skype, you name it. I've used them all. So there's no real magic to this. This is not a tool. This is a mindset change. And I know that's a really trite answer. And if you want to follow up with me offline, please do.
And just to say, with my Ireland Inc. hat on, I know one of our member companies, BXP Software, provide a really good online training platform. And I think one of the guys might be on the call. And I also know there's a company that's on the call called Score Buddy, who provide a really good quality scoring platform to help in terms of monitoring. So both of those companies are ones that you certainly should talk to. And if you want, Paul, just drop me an email and I can give you contact details. Conscious of time, so we have 3 more minutes. If anybody has any more questions, send them through. I'll just ask a question. Looking a bit further and looking on the horizon and all being positive in this beautiful Friday morning, what do you think the learnings will be 1 to 5 years from now for us from this experience that we're going through, John?
From a 1-year perspective, we're going to have a full 3 months probably out. And I think what's going to happen very, very quickly is our leadership teams are going to see will not be able to ignore the fact that work has continued and has been done very effectively from home. What we're going to see from our labor pool is saying, hang on a second, I've shown you that I can do that work, and I now can do it without the commute, without this cost, without that. And there's going to be a meeting of the minds, and the smart companies are going to embrace it and other companies won't. And I think that's going to cause some real dislocation in the labor market. And I think I do believe that the companies who embrace this and show their willingness to adopt remote work are going to become more attractive, and those companies that become more intransigent and essentially demand people to come back into the office, to the command and control world, are going to really, really struggle. From a 5-year perspective, watch, and this is a really telling point, I think, guys, watch what's happening in the education arena. Our kids are now all being taught on Zoom and Google Hangouts, et cetera, et cetera. It's now so deeply ingrained in them. Prior to this, they've been educating themselves, self-educating themselves through YouTube and a variety of other channels. The way in which the next generation has taught themselves to learn, self-taught themselves to learn, it's now that's advanced even more. So in the next 5 years, we're going to see a quantum change in the expectation from the next generation. And we are dinosaurs. We need to recognize that we're dinosaurs, and we're either going to be extinct or we're going to try to evolve and be ready for that next seismic change, because it's coming.
2 quick questions. I'm conscious of time. Susan has asked, is there any meeting software that you found better or worse? What would you recommend?
Oh, I would have been an absolute hardcore Zoom person for the last couple of years. Zoom has actually suffered a little bit this week due to their popularity. So I think they've got some issues they've got to work out. Google Hangouts has really, I think, stepped up from my own perspective, stepped up in the last couple of weeks. Now, some of our software developers have built a Chrome extension that we use internally that's been super helpful. They, to me, are the key ones. Some of the others, I've used Appear.in as a I suppose a backup. I have not gone back to Skype. I think I've used it once or twice. I think it would definitely be in the number 4 or 5 for me.
Just throw in a comment there, John. I mean, I think I'd do a shout out for Log Me In with GoToMeeting. It's pretty reliable as well. But I think the key is just making sure that if you're presenting with it, is that you know how to use it in advance, because I think they're all similar, but they've all got little nuances. So kind of understanding those is a good idea. That's
a fair point, Cormac. And the one thing I would say to it is if you're getting a product for free, recognize there's always going to be some issue at the end of the day. If you're paying for a product, you're going to get a premium product, and you're going to have the patches, less patches and less issues. So, if you're getting, for example, if you're getting Zoom for free, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Recognize that.
Yeah. Last question from Sean. Sean is asking, when do you think we'll all be back in the office?
6 months.
Oh gosh. Okay, 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seriously. I'm thinking September, October.
Okay. And then last question I'll take is from Susan. How do you manage the fact that different people are using different software? I think
it's a very interesting one, because 6 months ago I was a dyed-in-the-wool MacBook Pro and Zoom user, and I'm now, in the last couple of weeks, I'm beginning to morph over to a Google Pixelbook, and I'm using Google Hangouts a whole hell of a lot more. So a leopard can change its spots, and I am definitely an old dog with new tricks. So you have to evolve. I would laugh at myself 6 months ago if I was told I'd moved away from Apple and Zoom, but I'm beginning to do so.
Great. I'm conscious of time. I want to thank you so much, John, for your honesty and for all your advice there. I know people might want to reach out to you, and we had this discussion in our dry run yesterday. You're delighted for people to contact you via LinkedIn, but you want them to let you know it's because of this call, and you want them to be more specific in terms of what help they're looking for, rather than just the normal LinkedIn connection.
Correct. If you go to LinkedIn, put a personal note, 1 or 2 sentences, met you on that call, spoke to you, whatever. You don't have to tell me I'm great. Please don't. There's no point in blowing sunshine. Just give me a reference point so I know who it is. That's all I ask for.
And Susan just finishes up with leopards and dinosaurs. Love it, she said. So great references for us all. So John, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy man, and we really appreciate you giving time to all of our colleagues and friends today. And there's loads of thank you coming in. So thanks, John. As I said, a recording will be made available in the next couple of days, or hopefully for Monday, for anybody who wants to share this with their team. And we would encourage you to do that.
We're all in this together. Please help each other. That's all I ask.
Take care, everybody, and hopefully you all have a lovely, relaxing weekend. Thanks, John. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.